Hey guys, it's Blade again from Corridor Security, and today we're looking at a range of amps from JBL, this time the Club range. Okay, so the JBL Club series, what have we got? We've got 5-channel to run a whole system. We've got 4-channel to run just the front and rear door speakers. And we've got 2 monoblocks, different powers to run 2 different subwoofers. So these amps are extremely versatile. You can run them into different vehicles. Obviously a 5-channel can run a whole system, 4-channel you can run just the speakers, but that means that you could fit it into multiple vehicles, different installs. You've got a lot of options there. Now, obviously JBL, everyone knows the brand. We know they're good quality, so you know you're not gonna have any issues with them. And as well, they're not priced through the moon. They're very, very well priced and affordable. So let's open these up and we'll go from there. Okay, so we have the 2 monoblock amps opened up. To my right, we have the A600, and to my left, we have the A1000. So obviously, as I've mentioned, these are 600 watts and 1000 watts. So that's their RMS power at 2 ohm. So let's have a quick look at the 600. As you can see, it's a very, very small amp. For 600 watt RMS at 2 ohm, it's very, very good. You have your power inputs on this side, your speaker outputs on this side, and your RCA inputs here. Now, other than that, you wouldn't think that this has any adjustment on it. Well, you'd be wrong. Now, what you do is you take this trim panel off and you slide this back and you have all of your adjustments under there. So I'll show you that in a second. In the box, you'll have your instruction manuals. You also have a JBL sticker, your mounting screws, spare fuses, and the JBL logo. This is sent separately so that when you come to install it, say if you install it upside down or wherever, you're not gonna have an upside down logo because you can stick it on afterwards. And also, all of their monoblock amps come with a bass controller. So it's on like a phone style wire, and it comes to a controller. So you can turn the bass up and down from the front of the vehicle. Now the 1000, exactly the same style. You have all of the same inputs and outputs on this side. Power, speaker output, RCA in, and then obviously both have the controller input. Okay, so let's have a look at the adjustments underneath the face of the amp. Now, all you do is you slide this part down and you have your adjustments there. Okay, so at the top you have level input. So that essentially is whether you're using low or high level input. So low level is whether you're using RCAs on an aftermarket stereo, and then high level is if you're using speaker level input. So speaker to RCA essentially. So you have a 1 and a 2, that's dependent on the voltage of the high level input. So you can play around with that when you come to install it. Now next off you have gain. So that's your gain control to the speaker itself. Frequency is the frequency that the speaker will play under. So this will be for a subwoofer. So let's say I set the frequency to 100 Hertz. It will play everything under 100 Hertz. And then you have bass boost. So if you want a little bit of a boost, this will play up to 12 dB plus. And then you have a phase switch. So if you've accidentally wired the subwoofer out of phase, rather than rewiring it, you can just switch it to 80 or 180 degrees. And then you have turn on mode. So if you have a remote input, you would set it to REM for remote. If you don't, you can use a DC voltage. So basically a ignition light. That's there. Now on the 1000 watt amp, it's essentially exactly the same, but I will quickly run through it for you. Okay, so like before, you want to take this trim off. Now, what we've used is a plastic trim removal tool. Is the best thing you could use really. You just basically get underneath this part here and just run it alongside and it pops off. Using your fingernails is quite difficult and hurts a little bit, to be honest, but it's very well clipped on there, so you just want to pop it off with a trim removal tool. But once you've done that, take that off, slide the panel down, and then you have the exact same adjustments as the last amp. I'll quickly run through them. You have your level input, your gain, frequency, bass boost, mode. So that's the slightly different part. This mode is primary or secondary. So you can have 2 of these amps, phase and turn on mode. Okay, so that's it for the monoblock amp. So these will be used for subwoofers and subwoofers only, to be honest, because you wouldn't ever need that much power for a single speaker if it was fitted out anywhere else in the car. So these are subwoofer amplifiers, can be fitted to multiple subwoofers. Obviously you don't have to run just one subwoofer off of this. You could do 2, 3, depending on the power that you need. And obviously these will run at 4 ohm. So this one on the left here, at 4 ohm is 600 watt RMS, and then at 2 ohm, it's 1000 watt RMS. And this one over here is 350 RMS at 4 ohm, and 600 watt RMS at 2 ohm. So these will not play down to 1 ohm. These are not 1 ohm stable amps, so make sure you're aware of that. If you're running a single 1 ohm or a dual 2 ohm sub, and you want to run it down to 1 ohm, you cannot do that on these amps, so just be aware of that. Okay, and lastly, before we go into the other amps, we will look at dimensions. Now, for the 600, this is a very small 600 watt amp. To compare it to another brand, let's say I'd probably say half the size, maybe. We'll put up the dimensions now. For the 1000 watt amp, again, to be honest, this is not big. This is probably 2/3 bigger than the 600. So it's not massive. Again, compared to my hand, not huge. They're not very thick either, but they're built well. They're relatively heavy. So we'll put the dimensions for this amp up now. So now let's go to the 4 and the 5 channel amp, and we'll show you the specs on that. Okay, so now we have the 4 and the 5 channel amps. So obviously 4 channel is going to be for your front and rear speakers, or you could bridge it to run 2 subwoofers or 2 pairs of speakers, whatever you need to do. The 5 channel is going to be for front, rear and sub setup. So that's going to be a full package. So let's have a look at the 4 channel. Now I've taken the ring off of this one already. Let's have a look at this. So we'll pop the ring off. They are slightly easier to take off of these ones, I'll be honest, because they're slightly longer. And we'll slide this down. Now, many of the adjustments are very similar. So essentially what that is a high pass. When you set your frequency, it'll play everything above what you set it to. And then low pass is, if you set your frequency, it will play everything below that. So basically high pass is going to be for your door speakers, and then low pass will be for your woofers, so subwoofers or 6x9s or something like that. And obviously, again, gain control on each individual channel and frequency control on each individual channel. And then again, same as before, you have your level input and turn on mode. Okay, now onto the actual physical connections on the amp. Now here we have your normal power inputs. Here are your speaker outputs. So obviously you have a total of 8 of these, because you have a positive and negative for each output. So 1, 2, 3, 4 channels. And then you have 3 RCA inputs. Essentially 2 of these are inputs, 1 of these is an output. So if you wanted to chain that over to another amp, for instance, you can do that. But yeah, 2 of them are your main inputs. That's essentially it. You don't get a controller with this one because it's made just for speakers, so door speakers, and not for subwoofers. So the 5 channel itself, the biggest of all 4 of the amps, obviously, because it has the most power and the most outputs. If we have a look under here, we'll show you the connections. Very widely similar, basically a combination of the 4 channel and the mono blocks. So this is exactly the same as the 4 channel you've just seen, all these connections here, but you have the added bass subwoofer connections here. So bass boost, phase, frequency, gain and input. So that's basically all your connections there. It just allows, when you have this cover back on, it's all hidden away like so, and then you don't have to have a look at the adjustments. No one's going to fiddle around with it. It's nice and easy to work with. Okay, now let's have a look at the connections on the amp. Okay, this you actually have 10 speaker outputs. So you have 4 for your front speakers, positive and negative, 4 for your rear speakers, positive and negative, and 2 for your subwoofer, positive and negative. Other than that, you have 3 dedicated RCA inputs. They are all inputs, so front, rear, and sub, coming from your head unit. And then that is essentially it. You do get a bass controller with this one as well that comes in the packaging. So you control just the subwoofer, doesn't control any of the speakers. And again, not a massive amp. So the specs on the 5 channel, we have 50 watts RMS by 4 at 4 ohms and 320 watts RMS by 1 for the subwoofer at 4 ohm. This will run 75 watts per speaker, so times 4 at 2 ohm, and then 500 watts to the sub at 2 ohm. Okay, so the 4 channel specs, you're looking at 75 watts RMS by 4 at 4 ohms, and then 100 watts RMS by 4 at 2 ohms. So again, if you need to, you can bridge this. You'll get 200 watts RMS at 4 ohm only stable at 4 ohm when you bridge. So that will give you 2 channels at 200 watts. Now, what you can do as well is you can cross basically the impedances. So let's say your door speakers at 4 ohm, which majority of the time they will be. So you can run them at 50 watts. And let's say your sub is 2 ohm. You can perfectly do that, it's not a problem. The amp will do all the calculations it needs to, it will work out what it needs to from there. Okay, last but not least, dimensions. So the 4-channel is, I would say, roughly the same size as the monoblock. I think maybe slightly smaller. I will show you in the dimensions now, so we'll put it up on the screen for you now. And the 5-channel, obviously being the biggest of the lot, I would say probably 20% bigger than the 4-channel we have. We'll put the dimensions up now. Okay, so to quickly overview what you would use these amplifiers for. Now, obviously, the monoblock amps are just going to be for subwoofers. You need an amp for a subwoofer regardless. You cannot run it off a head unit. So obviously, the main thing you want to look out for is matching the power and impedance of your sub to your amp. That way, you shouldn't have any problems. Other than that, with the 4-channel, that's going to be obviously mostly used for your door speakers, so a front and rear setup. And then a 5-channel is going to be used for a whole install. So let's say if you have front speakers, rear speakers, and a sub, and they're widely similar, majority of the time you can get away with running a 5-channel amp. And that way it makes your life easier. You only have one amp in the car and one install essentially. Now, if you're running, let's say, quite a powerful subwoofer and you only want, say, 75 watts to your door speakers, you can then run a 4-channel and a monoblock, but it's twice the work. Essentially, you're running 2 amps. So you just need to work out what you'd want. That's pretty much it. Okay, so guys, that's pretty much it for the video. We've covered the JBL CLUB series of amps. Now, as they're very, very good amplifiers. We use them very often in installs. We have a lot of customers purchasing them because they're widely renowned for being very, very good amps. Now, obviously, prices will be up on the screen now for all 4 amplifiers. That's of today's filming. But yeah, we've covered the bases of why you'd use the amplifiers, what the power outputs are, how they look, how they work. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.